Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
be brave and follow your instincts because we've got one shot in this life.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey you! Welcome back to another episode of You're Not Getting Any Younger. I'm your host, Jen Glantz. Let me tell you something. When you start something, anything, people will try to talk you out of it. When I started my business Bridesmaid for Hire over 4 years ago, people came out of the woodwork to tell me that I was crazy. I remember running into someone I hadn't seen in years, and when I explained my business to them, they shot out a snot rocket of, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? This is so dumb." Instances like that happen more times than I can count on my hands and my toes. Even years later, after proving a successful business concept to the world, working with hundreds of clients and having people franchise my business, people still call me names. "Jen, you're so crazy, you're so stubborn, you're just cuckoo for these Cocoa Puffs." Today's guest has been called those names too. Lori Cheek. She's an architect turned entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Cheeked, a mobile dating app that makes missed connections obsolete. She started this app long before apps infiltrated the way we date. Lori's a Shark Tank veteran, and on today's episode, we chat about how to market a new business, the secret sacrifices entrepreneurs have to make, the truth about being on the show Shark Tank, and how to deal with rejection. Lots of it. I hope you enjoy. And hey, don't forget to join us in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. We talk about a lot of interesting, cool, unique things that you don't really talk about a lot, but you need to. You need to start to, in order to make the most out of life. And if you like this podcast, and it means the world to me that you're listening, make sure to subscribe and like and review it on iTunes. That always helps a lot. I read something that you wrote and you said, "For as long as I can remember, I have been fearless, and at a very early age discovered that there's a certain magic that comes from living an adventurous life." Oh my goodness, that quote just gave me the chills when I saw that. Where does that stem from? How did you become that kind of person?
I mean, I really think it's one of these characteristics that people don't look at as positive, but I've always been super stubborn. And I think it's ultimately come in handy in building a business and actually trying to follow my dreams because I don't take no for an answer and I won't give up.
Yeah, I'm also a super stubborn person, and I never like when people say to me, "That's such a bad thing, you got to change." What about being stubborn do you think pushes you forward in the entrepreneurship world?
Have my eye on the prize on so many levels in my life, whether it be fitness, friendships, relationships, family, and my thing that I care about most is this business. So, yeah, I think there's a certain amount of resilience and determination that comes with that quality that has helped me get to where I am this day.
You started a dating app called Cheeked long before dating apps became the norm for people to use. So in a way, when you started this app, this business, you entered quite a new and unknown territory. What were some of the fears that were going through your head when you said, "All right, I'm going to break through in an industry that I don't know if it's going to be successful or if it's going to be the norm in people's lives"?
Well, there was something about it that was beyond sort of a career change for me. I've always been a connector, a matchmaker, super social. So this was something that almost felt more natural to me than what my actual career felt. So I really didn't, when I took this leap, I didn't have any fears. I mean, the fear sort of came a little bit later after I realized what I'd gotten myself into, but I've never been more excited about getting ready to take on a journey in my entire life. So I was just super psyched about it.
Tell us how you came up with the idea for Cheeked as a dating app.
Well, I had been on a couple of online dating sites. I tried Match.com years ago, and I just absolutely despised it. I thought it was so weird, missing the chemistry of this virtual conversation that you had with a screen with someone that you're meant to date. And I do think that chemistry is the number one most important thing in finding the love of your life. So I was out to dinner with a guy one night, a colleague, and I had excused myself from the table. And when I came back, he'd scribbled on the back of his business card, "Want to have dinner?" And he slipped that to a woman as we were leaving the restaurant. And I had this light bulb moment that I could not stop thinking about. And it was about his interaction, his physical interaction with this woman for a date by slipping a card. And, I thought it sort of, what he did removed the awkwardness of walking up to somebody and saying hi. It was just a simple gesture that let her know that he wanted to see her again. And they went on a date from that card. And I left with this idea about taking the business out of the business card and having these cards that had pickup lines and a code that you'd hand out to people, and they would type in the code and find you online. So it was a privacy protected way of handing a card that didn't say where you worked or what you did or your phone number and your extension, all that weird stuff, for, handing the resume practically to someone that you sort of have a crush on.
It's such a good idea because every other dating app out there takes out that in-person quality. And this is the kind of dating app where it starts with seeing someone in person, but not quite having the confidence or the words to directly walk up to them and ask them on a date. What was so important about that in-person quality that you wanted to keep when you were designing this app?
So, we've changed a little bit now. We don't have those cards anymore, and it's a Bluetooth app, so it still connects you in person because Bluetooth works in a 30-foot radius. But, I'd passed cute guys on the subway a million times over my 16 years waiting to come up with this idea. And it was just, if you say something to somebody on a New York City subway at 8:30 in the morning, they clearly think you're insane. So you just don't talk to people. And I think the further along that technology started taking over our lives, that it's become harder and harder to meet people in person. So I'm just trying to take online dating back to the streets and have people look up from their phones and pay attention to what could be right in front of them, which could be the love of their life if they just look up.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about you personally, and I feel like we have a lot in common because I'm a little bit like this, is that you also went to the streets when you were marketing Cheeked. Instead of running online ads at first and all of these things, you also went on your own and you put cheat cards in people's purses, in their pockets, on wall art. How did you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to push away people judging me on the streets for doing this and strangers giving me weird looks? How did you say, this is how I'm going to market my business and I'm going to leave all of the fear behind?
I've always been really inspired by street art. So, and I'm an architect and artist by trade, and it just sort of seemed natural to me to do this sort of creative marketing. And, I really wanted to bombard New York City with these cards so I could physically make these connections happen. And, I would hand them out like I was handing out those laundromat flyers. And I had so many people type in my code and send me messages that I realized it was actually working. I got so much traffic to my website from just handing those cards out one by one, or posting them all over the place, or dropping them in people's bags and pockets. And I just realized what I was doing was actually working more than an online ad could at that time.
Do you think that would still be the case for a lot of people in 2018 starting businesses? Do you advise them to go out on the street, talk to people, hand out flyers, do a lot of what you did? Or do you think in this day and age, going online is really the only way you can market your business with social media now?
I think it both makes an impact, but I'll be more intrigued to look something up that someone has physically handed me or done some sort of fun stunt, that makes you really want to find out what it is. I mean, there's so much traffic online that it's hard to find the core. And I think it's also really interesting as a founder doing that hustle that I used to do so much, that it's admirable. And, you find the person that's behind this invention. So I think that's also intriguing.
You really are the kind of entrepreneur who did whatever it took to make this work and to keep this going. You bootstrapped your own business, meaning you paid for a lot of the expenses up front, at first, out of pocket. What were some of the things that you had to give up personally to be able to fund your business for the first couple of years?
Well, I'd saved a lot of money for my retirement and future in my 16-year career in architecture. So I had a nice blanket, and, I pretty much bulldozed through that in the first year and a half or so. And I mean, I guess that lasted me about 3 years. And then I had to start getting really crafty about how to keep paying the bills. So I'd worked at Christian Dior for 4 years, and I had this wardrobe sitting in front of me as a startup founder that I did not need. And I sold it all on eBay. What wouldn't go on eBay, I sent to consignment stores. I sold a lot of my electronics and my books and CDs, just anything. I was looking around like I would rather have this business than have this material stuff in my apartment. I just sold everything. And then I ended up renting out my West Village apartment on Airbnb for 14 months while I couch surfed with my friends and traveled, and made quite a bit of money to keep funding my business that way. So yeah, I made a lot of sacrifices, spending my savings and then just selling everything and living almost homeless for a really long time. But it was definitely an experience.
Was that a tough time for you, or were you just kept thinking, you know what, I'm laser focused here. I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't need a bunch of clothes. I don't need an apartment. Or was there a moment when you were like, man, this is hard. Maybe I should go back to a full-time career? Or did you just say, I'm going to keep going?
I mean, there were some definite ups and downs. Like sometimes I didn't know where I was going to end up when I was couch surfing. So that was sort of stressful. And I was still trying to run a business. And then I was like living my life out of a suitcase. So that wasn't that easy. But, there was a lot of adventure in it. Like I ended up living in Harlem for 4 months. I lived in Brooklyn. Like I lived in places that I never would have ended up, and saw so many neighborhoods. And I was house sitting a lot for people with really incredible apartments. So, I mean, that was sort of cool, but it definitely had its ups and downs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds, I know some people who might be listening saying like, wow, that sounds so glamorous. You got to live all over the place out of a suitcase, but I can only imagine how exhausting it could be to be doing all of that, plus having to run a business. Did you, during this time, have any type of something that was comforting, or something that just sort of was your rock during all this time? Because it seems like you had a lot of things constantly changing.
I would say my parents have probably been my biggest rock. Just I talk to them every day, and they're just this voice of comfort, and they're both very wise, and they've been very entrepreneurial in their lives as well. But other than that, I would say finding fitness in my life has been the other rock. So I've just always looked to that as sort of the release.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have to take on another type of hobby to just be able to find something else to focus their free time on and some of their stress on. And fitness is always such an amazing one. In terms of getting into the tech world, that wasn't your background. So starting an app, what were some of the things that you did first to get into a brand new industry that you didn't have any experience in?
Well, I immediately dove into the New York City tech scene. So I just started going to every single meetup and networking event that I could find. And I just started making relationships with a lot of people in the tech world. And if I had questions, I knew who to go to. But I did make a lot of mistakes along the way hiring developers. And that's probably was my biggest mistake, by not knowing what I was doing. I mean, we got covered in the New York Times early on, and we had a recurring subscription model where we had the button ticked off that captured everyone's card on one of the biggest days that hit our business to this date. So I had to email like over 300 people one by one asking to get their credit card information back, and I think we got 2 people to respond. So that was a big, big, big loss. And, that was me not thinking, why don't I test that button time and time and time again? Because our web developer was in London at the time, so I couldn't sit there and watch what he was doing. And I still wouldn't have even had any idea what he's doing if I was watching him code. So, yeah, I mean, that was just a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, and it's crazy because when you enter a new industry, sometimes you're not even so sure what kinds of questions to ask or what kinds of things to look for. So, what advice do you have for people who want to switch their careers, whether start their business of their own or go into a completely different industry? What are some of the things that they can do in those first 30 days to make sure that they are immersed in this new industry?
Well, I'd say just surrounding yourself with the appropriate people. When I even started my business, I hired 2 business guys and I didn't have a tech person on board. So I think I would have saved a lot of money. I wouldn't have ended up short of homeless for that period if I hadn't made all those mistakes out of the gate. But, I don't have a tech background and there was no time for me to learn how to code. I couldn't just turn back time and have this knowledge. So I think you really have to depend on the people that you put on your team. And I mean, those networking events that I tried to go to, it was helpful and I could answer a lot of questions that I needed to. But I do really think if you're not knowing what you're doing in a tech business, it's good to have a tech partner on board or someone that can definitely mentor or help you through.
Yeah, I always tell people to, know your strengths, but know your weaknesses. And when you know your weaknesses, pull other people in that could help you. And I'm stubborn like you, so I'm the kind of person that ignores my own advice. And oftentimes it gets me into, some crazy situations. You were on Shark Tank. What was it like preparing for that TV show?
So I could have had a law degree by the time I started that application and got onto the show. Like the amount of hours I put into getting into that scary hallway was absolute insanity. And again, trying to get on that show really interfered with the time I was putting into my business. But, I'd hit a pretty big brick wall at the time and I just needed to get that exposure or the funding. So I went in for whatever I was about to get out of that experience, but it was pretty intense.
Oh, I can imagine. Did you find yourself trying to, I've applied for Shark Tank a couple times, so I know what the application is like. And the application, first of all, is like 1,000,000 pages. And then you have to do a video. And then you have to go to round 2 and round 3. And then even when you get accepted, you don't know if you're going to be on the show. But when you found yourself there and you're standing in front of the judges and they're filming you, did you think that you were going to get a deal? Or did you just say, I am at this point just happy to be here today?
Well, everybody kept telling me, don't do this to yourself. You haven't made the right kind of money and they're going to tear you to shreds. And I thought that could actually happen. And then I also thought they might see the spark in me and see how determined I was, that they may just invest in me, because sometimes they do that.
Yep.
But yeah, that didn't happen. But I was terrified. I couldn't even, I don't know, my heart was beating in my throat. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to speak because my life was on the line. This was everything that I'd worked for over the past, I guess it was 4 years at that point. So it was terrifying.
How did you get through it? I mean, I could only imagine standing in front of, a couple of the most intimidating people in the world, trying to speak, trying to pitch a business that means so much to you. What kind of things did you just keep repeating in your head, or what did you do to calm yourself down in that moment?
Well, I've always had a little bit of fear of public speaking, but, as an entrepreneur running a tiny business, no one else is going to go talk for you. So I had to learn how to get out of that. And I had been on television quite a bit, but this was a whole new level. I mean, I was freaked out about the 8 million viewers that weren't even in front of me, when all these cameras are everywhere, and the reality of how big that show is, which is one of the most watched shows on primetime television. That was almost equally as terrifying as those people staring at you who were getting ready to rip your business to shreds. But I had a trailer, which was really cool, and I had a couple of glasses of wine before I went up to film my segment, and I didn't want to drink more than that because I didn't want to be slurring my words or just too drunk to talk. But yeah, it didn't help much. I was still really, really terrified.
You know, it's one of my favorite shows to watch, and my favorite people on that show are the people who get rejected from all of the sharks, because I think those people are people who have two choices once it's over. They could walk out and they can say, "All right, I give up, I'm done," or they can say, "I'm going to improve this, I'm going to make this better, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong." You were rejected from all the sharks. They said things like, "Quit your hobby," or "You're the right entrepreneur with the wrong idea." How were you able to take their criticism and leave that door and that hallway and do something extra amazing with your business?
Well, the funny thing is, I feel like they chopped up my episodes so much that, like, all the genius and smart things I said, they cut out. But when I was walking off the stage, I looked them each in the eye and I pointed at them one by one and said, "Trust you will all see me again." And I meant it. So then when I walked off, they filmed me talking about what just happened. And I remember saying, like, I really don't think they got it because they're all millionaires or billionaires. They're older. They don't understand what it is to be single in a city like New York right now. And I mean, they've never had they're all married, so they don't even understand what it is to be single. But yeah, I definitely used that as fuel. I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to prove the world that I wasn't about to give up. And I did take their advice. We sat down soon after that episode aired. And within the next month, we were already building the new version that we sort of took their advice and went a different route. And we've got way more users now than we ever had throughout the first phase of Cheeked.
I absolutely love that you looked at all of them and you pointed at them and said, "I will see, you'll be seeing me again," because that is something that I would completely do as well. And I think it's amazing that that's how you ended it. And it's such a shame that Shark Tank doesn't show that and that they edit the show in a way that they don't get your full personality. What advice do you have for others to battle rejection? Because as an entrepreneur or just a human being in general, we face so much rejection. And you seem like a person who takes rejection and pounds through it to make something beautiful on the other end. So what advice do you have for others?
I mean, I think that you just can't let failure get you down, and you almost have to look at it as one of the most valuable lessons in building a business. I mean, throughout life, making mistakes makes you smarter. So I just think you really have to embrace your mistakes, learn from them, make them fast, and don't make them again. And I mean, I can say that very firsthand because I feel like I've made every mistake that a business owner could possibly make. And I've definitely learned from them all.
When you are thinking about your business and the fact that you started this a while ago before dating apps had come to life, what advice do you have to entrepreneurs toying with an idea, thinking to themselves, "Hey, will this work?" How do they keep testing their idea and going forward with it?
A lot of people are like, "You can't tell anybody your idea, somebody's going to take it." And I'm like, I don't believe in that. So I talked about this for probably a year and a half. I told everybody my idea, and most people were like, "That is a really good idea." So I think you have to sort of go out and just, use your friends, family, everyone as a focus group. And I've heard people say, "Oh, I've got an idea for a photo sharing app." I'm like, okay, give me a break. Like, I don't think we need another one of those, but who knows? I don't know. If you believe in your idea enough, I just think you maybe just got to go for it.
Yeah.
You got one shot in this life.
Yeah, and sometimes the crazy ideas that everyone tells you not to do are the ones that are the best ideas. Did anyone call you crazy, tell you to stop, tell you not to quit your day job? Did anyone try to discourage you? And if so, what did you do?
I mean, I don't think everybody totally believed that I was going to do what I did. And I even remember my mom, who's one of my dearest friends, one day was like, "How's your little company doing?" And I'm like, "Mom, this is not little. I'm getting ready to quit my career and build this thing." So, I just don't know if everybody totally took me seriously that I was going to jump ship and go build this thing. And one of my best friends early on was like, "It doesn't seem like it's working out. When are you going to pull the plug?" And I'm like, "Do you guys even know me?" Anyway.
Yeah. I feel you. I when I started Bridesmaid for Hire, I had a lot of people call me crazy. People still do call me crazy, and I always think the same thing as you. Like, I believe in this, and I'm going to prove people wrong. And when people do call me those names, I sort of laugh back at them.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever feel being a woman in tech was something that you had to work extra hard to prove yourself, or did you ever face any experiences or moments being a woman in tech that really made you have to stand up for yourself?
I know this is a major subject, but I'm not one of those women that really signs up for this because, I had a really hard time raising money early on, and I don't know if that's because I'm a woman. Like, I just didn't have any awkward circumstances where I could pinpoint that was the reason. But I think being a woman in tech is more like being a sort of a neat minority because you stand out. Like, I used to go to tech events all the time and was very noticeable. All these guys fist bumping, and then I'd go on stage in a pitch competition against them all, and I would win. And then, I think the tables have sort of turned a lot. I've seen a lot of those same people sending me emails asking me for advice. So I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. What's the best part about being your own boss?
Well, like right now, it's 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm having an awesome conversation with you, and I'm sitting in my gym clothes. No one's looking for me. I'm working all the time, but I just love what I do. When I had a full-time career, I remember I used to get to work at 9:15 every day, and I would have my bags ready to go out the door at 5:59 because I was living a life devoted to building someone else's dream, and now I'm devoted to building my own. And although I work all the time, I've never been happier.
Yeah. What is the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you when it comes to starting your own business?
I would say to surround yourself with the people that you want to become. So that includes just positive people, ambitious people, and successful people. And I think you just need to soak up whatever they've got and put it into your own personality.
Definitely. Amen to that, Lori. I have one more final question for you. Are you ready?
I think so.
Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
be brave and follow your instincts because we've got one shot in this life, and you can trust that the payoff will be worth it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lori. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and Cheeked.
So I can be found on most social media networks at Cheeked, which is CHEEKD, and I'm Lori Cheek NYC on Twitter, and we are Cheeked.com, and we're in the iTunes store. It's a free app, so you can download it there, and you've got nothing to lose except an opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.